We're here inside St. Joseph Museums talking with George Glore. And George, I understand what we're sitting in front of here is an original staircase. Take us back in time here a little bit.
This staircase was removed from the administration building, the center building, which was the original building of the hospital, built in 1872 and opened in 1874. And this beautiful staircase went to the second floor, and then it split and went on in a divided manner to the third and fourth floors of the building.
And now that this is here for everyone to see, just a little piece of it, tell us what all has had to happen, I guess, to keep this preserved, to keep things alive for people to see.
Well, we realized that we were going to be moving out of the center building when it was time for the prison to take over the building. And so we grabbed the staircase and the chandelier hanging by the staircase and so on, so that we could preserve it, because they were an important part of our history over the years. Everyone coming and going from the hospital used the staircase, and so we wanted to be sure and preserve that. It was a lot of work, but I'm glad it's here.
And it's fitting that it's here, one of the first things that you see when you come into the museum now.
Yes, yes. And there was a time when the patients were involved in ballroom dancing and that sort of thing, and they would come down the staircase in their finery going to the dance or the ball. And so a lot of patients tread up and down that staircase over the many years the hospital was open.
Well, there's one exhibit here, George, that everybody remembers that they see up on the second floor. Tell us about it.
Yes, it's a display of hardware, nails, screws, bolts, and bits of glass, and all kinds of things that were taken surgically from the intestinal tract of a patient back in 1929. Her particular disorder was called pica, and she had a need to pick up everything she found and swallow it. And the collection totals 1,446 pieces, and there's every kind of nail and screw and bolt you can think of, spoon handles, salt and pepper shaker tops. She lived to make it to surgery, but unfortunately she died during the surgery.
A lot of different things on the second floor to see. The cages are another thing. Tell us about those.
We have a section there devoted to the history of psychiatry, and we have various restraining devices, cages that were used to immobilize people and keep them under control. There's Benjamin Rush's tranquilizer chair, which was supposed to calm the patient, and they were strapped in the chair for as long as 6 months at a time without being removed, so they had no other option than to be calm. There is the O'Halloran swing, where the patient was spun about at a high rate of speed with the idea that this would clear the congested blood out of the arteries of the brain and clear up the mental condition. There was a great belief during that period of time that many mental disorders were caused from congestion in the blood, and so a lot of those devices were geared toward getting rid of that congestion. Bloodletting was practiced. There's bloodletting equipment there, and the physicians would sever a vein or an artery and bleed the patient frequently in an effort to get rid of that bad blood. And of course, after numerous bleedings, the patient became weak and unable to offer resistance, so it was thought that they were improved, you know. There's a pillory there that was used to lock the patient, sort of like the stocks, lock the patient in one position, and they were oftentimes displayed on the town square along with prisoners who were put into those pillories. And then the public could stone them or spit on them or jeer at them, make fun of them, whatever they chose to do. There are several devices there that are reproductions, but there's one in particular that came from Fulton State Hospital. It's a metal cage made of heavy strap iron, and we have reason to believe that more than one patient was put in the cage at a time, probably patients who were extremely combative, extremely disturbed, and they were put in there so that they would take care of one another. That was a horrible, horrible thing, but that kind of abuse did occur.
And there's a lot of art on display too. Tell us a little bit about that, the story behind that.
Yes, on the third floor we have a lot of artwork done to the patients. It was done in occupational therapy. It gave the patient an opportunity to express themselves, to try out their creative abilities, and there were some really nice things turned out. Some were rather crude, but if the patient did it and felt good about it, it was therapeutic. And we had painting and ceramics and leathercraft and various other arts and crafts available for the patients.
And another interesting display, George, there was a schizophrenic patient who couldn't speak but did find a way to communicate. Tell us about that one.
Yes, she chose not to speak. She would grunt and make noises but didn't verbalize, and she did some embroidery work on an old hospital tea towel and put her thoughts and her ideas into that embroidery work. And it's rather bizarre. You could see that her ideas were not always related, and there was a lot of what we call psychobabble in there. But she made several pieces like that, and that's the only piece that we were able to preserve. But it's interesting. She talks about being lonely. Love me, I am crazy. Wait for me, I am lonely. She talks about the girl with her hair on fire and just some real bizarre things. So it's hard to know just what all was going through her mind, but you can get bits and pieces of that information by looking over the embroidery work.
And there are so many things here that people will take away, so many things that people will remember. Things you would expect to see inside a museum, but you might not expect to see actual cars inside of here. And you go downstairs and there are a couple of different cars. Tell us how those ended up here.
We had, for a number of years, we had a vocational training program for our youth in the hospital. We had children here ranging in age from 5 through 17. And they were involved in vocational education, and they loved working around the automobiles. And we had an auto body and fender repair section where they worked on the cars. And the truck that you saw there in the display was completely totaled. It was rebuilt by the children, and then they painted it, and we had a person come in and do the airbrushing. But the kids came up with the design, and they called it the Jukebox Hero. And we would take it out on displays, both cars, in fact, both vehicles. We'd go out to auto shows, and some of the kids would go along and spend time with the vehicles, telling the public what role they had played in changing that vehicle and in customizing it. The Yellow Rose, which is a convertible roadster there, was given to us. It went through the flood that hit the plaza back in the 70s. And it was a brand new automobile, but it did get water in the engine and it cracked the block, so they put a new engine in it. And they totally revamped it. They cut 30 inches out of the center and made it much shorter. And then eventually welded the door shut, so you had to jump into it to get into it. And the dash and the bumpers and the mirror holders, all made of walnut. And that walnut was taken from a beam out of an old building that was demolished here on the hospital grounds. So the kids spent a lot of time working on those vehicles, and it was a very therapeutic process for them. And the idea was to get them interested in perhaps working in that field after they left the hospital.
And we've only talked really about just a few of the things here inside St. Joseph Museums for you to see, yet there's so much more to explore here. We put the phone number and address up on the screen right here on Frederick. You can check out the Bloor Psychiatric Museum inside the St. Joseph Museums. Come and take a look for yourself.